This is NTD's The Nation Decides 2024 with Steve Lance and Tiffany Meier.
And welcome to NTD's The Nation Decides 2024. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier.
With President Biden and former President Trump now being the presumptive nominees, the presidential races held today from coast to coast are essentially formalities. But we'll also be covering very significant primaries for the House and Senate.
The focus tonight is on foreign policy. In what direction does each candidate want to take the nation? What do they plan to do on the world stage if elected?
We'll be digging into all of that tonight as we track the results in 5 states, which brings us now to some projections.
You know, spicy interview clips of people giving a hot take or
And as we can see here, former President Trump is projected to win the state of Ohio in the GOP primary, uncontested essentially.
And then in Florida, the GOP primary, Trump is also expected and projected to win that state.
And as we continue to go through here, Ohio Democratic Senate primary, the incumbent Sherrod Brown is projected to win the state of Ohio's Democratic primary. And Joe Biden is also projected to win the state of Ohio.
And let's go to NTD's Iris Tao, who is at the White House. Now, besides the contest we just covered, a highly anticipated GOP Senate primary is underway now. Iris, what can you tell us about that?
Right, good evening to you. Also, as Trump and Biden have both clinched their party's nominations, tonight's big drama will mostly unfold in the key down ballot races, among them a key Senate race in Ohio that could really shape the control of Congress in 2025. So 3 Republicans are now in a fierce fight to try to phase and potentially unseat a Democratic senator in that deep red state, which Trump has won in the past 2 presidential elections. The 3 Republicans among them are Bernie Moreno, a high-end car dealer endorsed by Trump. The 2 others are Ohio's State Secretary Frank LaRose and State Senator Mac Dolan, who's actually attacked former President Trump over January 6th incident. And Trump rallied for Moreno last weekend in Ohio, and while casting his own ballot in Palm Beach, Florida today, said, "Our country needs strong people." Here's what Trump said. Watch.
We need patriots. We need strong people in our country. Our country is going downhill very fast, very rapidly. Millions of people coming across the border, coming from jails, from prisons, coming from mental institutions and insane asylums, terrorists. We need strong people in this country. We don't need weak people.
The Ohio race tonight will serve as a test to Trump's influence on a contested race. Meanwhile, President Biden spent today campaigning in Nevada, vowing to beat Trump in November. Watch.
Last week, Donald Trump and I clinched the nominations. We're going to beat him again. Because I feel really good as I go around the country, not a joke.
And President Biden is on a 3-day campaign swing to the Sun Belt, mostly to court Latino voters. Back to you.
Iris, thanks for that. We'll be checking in with you later.
And let's now bring in our remote guest, Bart Marcois, former presidential campaign policy advisor and former U.S. diplomat and former Department of Energy official for international affairs. Great to have you with us tonight, Bart.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Tiffany.
So, Bart, foreign policy, obviously a big issue in this election. 2 wars with global consequences in Europe and the Middle East. Russia's threatening to use nuclear weapons, and China escalating its hostile operations in the Indo-Pacific and elsewhere. Let's take a look at this poll that AP has conducted and get your thoughts on this one here as we pull it up. Some of the top priorities, Bart, that highlight how Americans are taking foreign policy issues more seriously than ever, it appears. Americans picking a foreign policy as an important issue for the U.S. government to work on, having jumped 20% since 2023. Now a top 2 issue is U.S. involvement, up 15%. Immigration is also going up. Do you see foreign policy playing an outsized role over the next 4 years? And why do you think we're seeing this dramatic increase?
Yes, I think we will see that over the next 4 years, and I think we'll see it in the heat of this campaign. This is the fondest dream of every American diplomat, that suddenly the American people will wake up and care about foreign policy. And we all used to think, yes, and we'll be relevant suddenly. Well, I have bad news for my former colleagues. We're still not relevant, the diplomats of the world. People want to go back to forgetting about foreign policy, but we can't. Joe Biden ran on a platform of being the foreign policy president. He said, the adults are going to be back in charge again when the Biden campaign took over. And what we see around the world is utter and absolute chaos. Everywhere you look, you see chaos, and you see the foreign parts of the world crowding in on America, and people want it to stop. They don't want any wars. They don't want any conflicts. They don't want to see embassies evacuated. 11 embassies have been evacuated during just the first 3 years of Joe Biden's administration. That's a record. In a non-war time, in a time when the U.S. is not in a declared war, we've never had 11 embassies evacuated for emergencies as we have in the last 3 years.
And Bart, let's talk about the Middle East. President Biden's taken a series of steps to unwind sanctions, relax policies on terrorist groups, and give Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism, access to more funding. He's also put an emphasis on de-escalation. Now, this is a big departure from the Trump administration, which was more hawkish on the Middle East issues, but still managed to broker the Abraham Accords, having 2 more Arab nations normalize relations with Israel. Now, how have each of these administrations impacted the Middle East?
The Trump administration, when Donald Trump came in and he moved the embassy, the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, my former colleagues, again, I was a State Department Arabist, my former colleagues, especially those in the Near East division, went ballistic. They said, this is terrible. The Arab street will erupt. War will erupt. We will lose all the progress we've made with moderate Arab states. None of that happened. The move happened quietly, peacefully, and what Donald Trump showed was that there was no daylight between the United States and Israel, and there was a predictability in what the United States would do and what Israel would do. And he brought the Arab nations and Israel together, and they made peace. That was because Donald Trump had a strong hand. It's because he brought Iran to its knees. Iran was within weeks of running out of foreign currency, and Biden came in, and the first thing he did was start giving them billions of dollars in cash again, and they spent it destabilizing the region. That's what they do. And when you give somebody bad a lot of money and a lot of weapons, they make bad things happen.
Yeah, Bart, the Biden administration has approved another sanctions waiver for Iraq to buy electricity from Iran. Some critics equate this to funding a state sponsor of terrorism, with Iran being given access to $10 billion in assets. Here's what the State Department had to say.
This is not just a decision that has been made by this secretary. It is a decision that was made by a previous secretary appointed by a previous president in the administration immediately preceding ours. What we have seen, and this is borne out time and time again, is that Iran is always going to fund terrorism. It's always going to fund destabilizing activities. This money helps the Iranian people because it can only be used for humanitarian purposes and other non-sanctionable goods.
Bart, what is your response?
I'm smiling because I've heard naive people for decades talk about how money cannot be used. This money can only be spent on this and not on that, as if money is not fungible. If I give you $50, Steve, and say, now you can have this $50, but you may not spend it on candy, and you say, okay, I will not spend this on candy. I will spend this on an Uber to take me to the candy store, and I will spend the $50 I would have spent on something else, I will spend on candy. It's meaningless to say a certain amount of money is limited in the way it can be spent. If you give somebody money, you gave them money, and they're going to spend it how they're going to spend it. That's as simple as that.
And now, Bart, Israel recently confirmed the death of an American who was believed to be held hostage by Hamas. He was killed on October 7th, but only now are we getting confirmation about this. Now, what's happened to these hostages is often tied to Biden's foreign policy. His administration was hammered by critics for unfreezing billions of dollars worth of Iranian assets as part of a prisoner swap with Iran. Now, shortly after that, Iran-backed Hamas launched its attack on Israel, taking hundreds of hostages. Now, Trump also did prisoner swaps, but no price was paid for a hostage under his administration. Why would Biden pay up when his predecessor has shown this can be done in another way, one that says you can't put a price on Americans?
Because you can't conduct diplomacy without some kind of implicit threat. There's a great episode from a show that was very popular, a TV show very popular in the 1970s called Happy Days. Richie Cunningham and his buddies, and the tough guy was Arthur Fonzarelli, Fonzie, the Fonz. Fonz was a tough guy, and Richie was getting beat up by a bully, and Fonz said, stand up to him, and Richie stood up to him, and the bully hit him and said, and there's more where that came from. And Fonzie said to Richie, he said, Cunningham, I forgot to tell you, a threat only works if you've ever actually hit somebody for once in your life. That's Joe Biden is Richie Cunningham. Nobody takes him seriously. Nobody's afraid of him. Nobody's afraid of Antony Blinken or of Jake Sullivan. They have nothing backing them. When Trump said, you'd better do this or you will suffer the consequences, they weren't sure what Donald Trump would do. He had credibility as a president, and they were afraid to cross him. Nobody's afraid of Joe Biden. Nobody's afraid of America with Joe Biden at the helm. Even though they know it's Barack Obama behind the scenes, nobody's afraid of them. It's very sad.
And to your point, speaking of which, President Biden did reverse a Trump-era terrorist group designation on the Houthis, saying it was to alleviate the suffering of Yemeni civilians under Houthi control. The Houthi slogan, by the way, includes death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews. Biden only recently reinstated the terrorist designation to some extent after the Houthis committed more acts of terrorism. So when dealing with terrorists, does aggressive, forceful action work better than de-escalation?
Oh, absolutely. And it must be immediate. When Biden took a retaliatory action against the Houthis last month, 2 months ago, he telegraphed it for nearly 2 weeks before he actually did anything. And then he blew up a bunch of cinder block shacks out in the middle of nowhere in northern Yemen. There was nothing left in those shacks. There were no bad guys hiding in the shacks. The missiles had been taken out. The drones had been taken out. He spent something like $60 million blowing up some cinder blocks. It was absolutely useless. When I lived in Yemen for 2 years in the 1990s, nobody ever heard of the Houthis. They were just a family. They were a tribe up in an ungovernable part of Yemen, the province of Saada. And we didn't go up there, but they kept to themselves. It was only after Iran was given tens of billions of dollars that they then gave to the Houthis, that the Houthis became a threat and they took over Yemen. One Marine Expeditionary Unit could take out all of the Houthis in Yemen and destroy them. I'm not suggesting that we do that, by the way, but they are not a real military threat without all of the backing and all of the money from Iran. They have advanced technology, they have missiles, they have drones, they have rockets, and they are only a force to be reckoned with because they have sophisticated weaponry, and they are fairly disciplined. They're a very disciplined tribe. compared to the rest of the Yemenis.
Bart Marcois, really fascinating discussion. Greatly appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And right now, we're going to pull up some of the Senate races, key Senate races this evening, which we're going to be tracking as the data does come in. Let's take a look at those right now. Pull them up on our screen here. We have the Ohio GOP Senate primary. You have Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno, and then Frank LaRose. Mostly, folks are anticipating this race to be between Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno. We'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the night. And our special coverage is just getting started. When we return, Data Hub 2024 with NTD's Dave Martin. That and a lot more when we return.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Hey everyone, it's me, Sebastian, and it is a beautiful day today. We have so much to be grateful for, so just remember, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. I just love inspiring people to be the best they can be, and the reason I'm able to inspire so many people is because people like you who inspire me with your support of Shriners Hospitals for Children. Since I was little, I've broken 100 bones, and I've had 19 surgeries. Shriners Hospitals for Children was with me every step of the way. But more than that, they've given me the confidence to know I can do whatever I set my mind to. Like right now, I've set my mind to sharing my smile with you. Did you get it?
Because of people like you, I can play the violin.
I can play piano.
I can understand.
The help I get is only possible because of caring people like you who pick up the phone and call the number on your screen to make your monthly gift.
And when you call or go online right now to donate $19 a month or more, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of all the smiles you're bringing to kids' faces every day.
Kids like me.
And me.
And me.
And me. So what are you waiting for? You can inspire kids like me by visiting loveshriners.org. After all, you can't help everyone, but you can help someone. So let's go!
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving. Join me and bring a smile to the world with your monthly gift today.
Please call now. If operators are busy, please call again or go to loveshriners.org right away.
Join me and bring a smile to the world.
We're told in Genesis chapter 1:26 that God has made man in his image, and by his likeness has he made him.
In this free online course, Dr. Justin Jackson, a distinguished Hillsdale College professor, guides you through the Genesis story. When you sign up, you'll explore some of life's most important questions, gain a greater appreciation for how the Bible confronts pain and hardship with redemption and hope. Sign up for the Genesis story, free of charge at learnfromhillsdale.org.
And we're back with NTD's The Nation Decides 2024. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier. Let's go on over to the Data Hub with NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Tiff. You know, a lot has happened since Super Tuesday just 2 weeks ago. Now, if you'll recall, there were 15 elections that night with 865 delegates up for grabs. Now, 2 weeks later, it's been mostly sorted out with Donald Trump being awarded 812 of those delegates, while Nikki Haley has gotten 51. 2 of them are still unallocated. Now that put Trump at 1,088 total delegates, not far behind the 1,215 needed to win the GOP nomination. Now, Nikki Haley, of course, dropped out of the race soon afterwards. The elections have still continued. Since Super Tuesday, there have been 7 more elections going on with 188 total delegates up for grabs. Donald Trump so far has been awarded 185 of those. That, of course, pushes his total to 1,273, more than enough to win the GOP nomination. Now tonight, we've got 5 more state elections, as has been mentioned. We've got Ohio, we've got Illinois, Kansas, Arizona, which of course is a swing state, and Florida here, which has been a swing state, of course, in years past, but they're not really considered. It's more of a red state now. Why? They've got a 2-term governor there in Ron DeSantis, who's a Republican. Plus, in the last 2 elections, Donald Trump has won this by somewhat increasing margins. Now, here is the last 6 presidential elections from Florida. Now, of course, there's a 2000 contested one where Bush won narrowly, but then he won by a sizable margin in 2004 before Obama took this in both 2008 and 2012. Trump, of course, as I mentioned, then took it in 2016 and 2020 by increasing margins. Now, we will actually get into what the swing states are later and who is ahead in the polls, but for right now, let's go back to the desk.
All right, Dave, thanks for that. We will be checking in with you later.
And now to our in-studio panel, where we have Gerard Filitti, political strategist, senior counsel of the Lawfare Project, and Dante Mills, political strategist and national trial attorney of Mills Edwards. So guys, President Biden continues to blame Trump for the January 6th Capitol breach, essentially using what happened as a warning to Americans that democracy is on the ballot this November. Dante, we'll start with you. Do you see this as a winning strategy for 2024 for the president?
I think it's a conversation that he has to have, because the nation is really split on what happened on January 6th. And I think for him not to address it, he allows the narrative that Trump is pushing forward to prevail. So he does have to push back some and say, no, it shouldn't have happened. We want a nation of laws. We want our elections to be solid and not to be questioned. And I think President Biden has the obligation to make that an issue here. And I think it's going to bring somebody on his side who would otherwise say, I don't want chaos after this election, so let me make sure my vote counts. I put in my vote for President Biden for the next term so that there's it's not up in the air, right? There's no question at the end of this election cycle.
So Gerard, what do you think Republicans have to do to counter this campaign strategy?
I think in part they're already doing it. They have the narrative that this election is important for democracy because Trump is being targeted politically in litigation, in lawsuits, and in criminal prosecutions. And what they're trying to establish is to set the narrative that this is something that's fundamentally unfair, that Republicans need to get out to vote because their vote is not being counted. Their vote is being affected by criminal procedures being brought against Donald Trump. So they're making this as well about a fight for democracy, but they're positioning themselves as the true saviors because of the corrupt system that's going after Republicans.
Continuing on that, I want to look at some polls on this issue. There's a poll by CBS News and YouGov that found voters were given some choices on the question of, whether democracy and the rule of law will be safe as it relates to this election. Now, 34% said only if Biden wins, 33% said only if Trump wins, and about 33% chose if either wins or won't be safe either way. Now, Dante, why do you think Biden has prioritized a message on democracy when most Americans don't really see him as the solution, just based on this poll?
Because he's jumping on the fact that Americans see Trump as the problem, right? So whether you see Biden as a solution or not, if you see Trump as a problem, Biden is saying, I'm another option. And I think he has to do that because, to be quite honest with you, I don't know if President Biden has that appeal that's going to get voters out in droves at the polls or at the election box. I don't think he has that draw where people are saying, I need to vote for him. So what he has to do is he has to turn the tide and say, okay, you may not be drawn to vote for me, but here's a bad guy. You don't want to vote for him. You want to make sure your vote counts against him. And that's the strategy that he's using. I think his team is smart to make that the political strategy.
That's really fascinating. Gerard, what do you think of that argument? Is that why people are voting for President Biden?
I think that does have a lot to do with it. It's not just about the message of why you should vote for me. You also have to explain to Americans why you shouldn't vote for the other guy. Donald Trump did that very successfully in 2016. He got the never Hillary vote. And now we're seeing Joe Biden playing that as well. You're convincing people not just that it's important to vote for Joe Biden, and he still needs to define an agenda, but you're explaining to people the importance of voting for me is I'm not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is dangerous, so come and vote for me. Democracy is at stake. That's a message that resonates to some.
And if we could pull that poll back up again, I do find it fascinating, the democracy and rule of law poll. When you look at the numbers, it's so close there between Republicans and Democrats. It leaves you to think, the spread below it. If neither wins, and don't be safe. Essentially, I'm looking at that and I'm seeing that the base is rather baked in. So, Gerard, how important is the, moderate vote and the undecided?
Oh, the moderate vote and the undecided are very important. You need to win a substantial part of your own base in order to make it halfway there, but you need the balance to come from independents, from moderates, and from voters on the other side who switch over to you. And in this particular race, we see that Trump and Biden are polling at around the same percentage among their core supporters. At least that's how it's going to play out for a month or two from now. And what they really need to do to get to that threshold is bring in the moderates, bring in the independents, bring in the people, for example, who are voting for Nikki Haley or who are not keen on Biden. You need to convince some of them to come over. Otherwise, you just don't get past the threshold.
So Dante, to that point, what do you see President Biden's message being to that kind of independent voter that's not really, I wouldn't say buying into, but not resonating with the democracy is on the line strategy?
That I'm not extreme. And I think the poll, what it really shows is it's a sad state where you feel like if your candidate does not win, the system did not work. That's not how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to place our vote and may the best candidate win. But now we're at a point where it's so, it's a battle where if my guy doesn't win, then something was done in order for that to happen. If Trump doesn't win, then the system was rigged. Or if Biden doesn't win, the system is rigged. We got to bring it back to the middle of, we all have our perspectives, we all get our one vote, and whoever gets the most votes win. Now, the most votes are going to come from that middle. I think there's people who are going to vote for Trump no matter what he does. He even said that. Right? We all remember him saying, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue. And that's true. There's some people who's going to vote for him no matter what. I think Biden has a smaller number of people that will vote for him no matter what. But combined with people who will never vote for Trump, I think that number kind of balances out. It's who can get that middle group, who can pull Nikki Haley's voters. And say, if Biden can say, I'm going to be in the middle enough that I'll take care of you guys, Trump is not going to listen to you. Or can Trump say, I'm going to sway a little bit and come towards the center so that Nikki Haley's voters are welcome in my camp? I think whoever does the best job of that, that's who's going to win this election.
We also have the potential third-party spoilers with RFK Jr., but that's a later topic. But continuing on the issue of democracy, now there's been an update on the January 6th committee hearings. Republicans have released the transcript of the agent who drove the presidential SUV, the Beast, on J6. Now, he refuted what White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony of a third-hand story had said. Now, here's a clip of that testimony Hutchinson gave to the mostly Democrat committee. Let's play that now.
So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol. And when Bobby had relayed to him, we don't have the assets to do it. It's not secure. We're going back to the West Wing. The president had very strong, a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now. To which Bobby responded, sir, we have to go back to the West Wing. The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol. Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
So it turns out that the driver said Trump never grabbed his steering wheel and that he didn't see Trump reach for it at all. Now, however, it was Hutchinson's testimony that was highlighted during a televised hearing by the committee. Now, a Republican oversight report says the committee had the hearing months before even getting the driver's side of the story on these very serious crimes against Trump and claims. Now, same thing happened with Agent Bobby Engel, who said he didn't recall Hutchinson's story. Now, to many, the committee was pushing a dishonest narrative about Trump. Now, given these revelations, Gerard, how might this impact voters who had put trust in this mostly Democrat committee, given this report that's coming out?
I hate to say it, but for the people who put trust in this committee and see this committee as essential and their conclusions as rock solid, they're not going to change their minds. They're looking at this. We heard this testimony almost as if she were sitting there, almost as if it were firsthand. It's hearsay. It's not something you're getting now, the testimony of the people who were actually in the car, and it's different. So this really shows that there was a rush to judgment, and people who had not already decided that this committee did the right thing, they're the ones who are paying attention. They're the ones who are listening to this. It's that moderate block of voters that this appeals to. People who've already made up their minds about Donald Trump on January 6th, this won't make a difference to them.
And Dante, how do you view this whole difference with, say, the televised version versus what we're now getting?
I don't know if there's anybody left who hasn't made up their mind about January 6th. Either you think it was the right thing or the wrong thing. I don't know if there's a middle ground still that's available. And I think most people have decided that. Even this story, if Trump really desperately wanted to go to the Capitol, did he really think that they were going to try to seize it, or was he just there rallying the people? I mean, even that narrative can go either way. You can say Trump wanted to be there to rally the people, or you can say, no, he wanted to be there to really force people into action and to do something. So no matter what the facts are, if you've taken a side, I think you can craft those facts to fit your side. I don't think January 6th is really going to have much more impact on this upcoming election because people's minds are made up and they've decided on that issue already.
Well, we do have a lot more to cover. We'll be right back after a very short break. Stay with us.
My name's Jen Marshall. I've been playing professional football in the Women's League for 3 years now. We're about 3.5 weeks out of my second surgery now. I had no pain whatsoever, no tingling, no numbness, and I felt incredible. I'm able to do pretty much anything. He doesn't want me pushing it too much, but I'm able to do, assisted pull-ups now. I'm riding a bike. I'm walking continuously at an incline on treadmills. I can do push-ups again. I can get out of bed, no problem. You're in great hands.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Did you know the government can essentially rob you in plain sight? Former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan warned, deficit spending is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. But he added, gold stands in the way of this insidious process. Birch Gold Group has helped thousands of Americans diversify their IRA or 401k into gold. To get a free info kit from Birch Gold, text PREPARE to 989898. Again, text PREPARE to 989898 right now.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, Every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani potrzebują waszej pomocy.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. This is a serious problem, but one we can solve. Visit feedingamerica.org to help. Together we can solve hunger. Together we're feeding America.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, fostering martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. The preliminaries for the 2024 NTD International Traditional Martial Arts Competition will be held across New York, Taiwan, and Germany. The grand finals will be broadcast live online worldwide in August 2024. For more information, please call 1-888-477-9228.
And welcome back to The Nation Decides 2024. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier.
And we're here at the big wall with NTD's Dave Martin. The presidential election is really ultimately going to come down to a few states. But right now, Dave, first, let's talk about some of these non-swing states to sort of set the table as to how important those swing states will ultimately be.
Yeah, actually, let's start off with Biden right now. Now, Biden is likely to take these 20 swing states. That includes, of course, here Washington, D.C. Now, if you add up those 20 swing states, he's up to 220.
These aren't swing states,
sorry,
right?
non-swing states. Thank you, Steve. Yep. Very, very important there. Now, I'm not including Nevada here, even though Biden took it 4 years ago and Clinton before that. It's like an iffy non-swing state, if you will. Now let's look at Trump's likely wins here. 24 states for him, that non-swing states, of course. Now that takes him to 217 electoral votes, so 7 less than Biden there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're not including Florida as a swing state, and that's pretty big because that's 30 electoral votes right there. Only California and Texas have more.
Just to be clear, Dave, these states are essentially baked in for the candidates.
Exactly. Now, if you notice here, I'm not including North Carolina. That's like Trump's iffy swing state. He's won at the last 2 elections, and that's a big one too. That's 16 electoral votes. That one we're still counting as a swing state. Now, what are the actual swing states? Let's bring those up here. There are 7 swing states right here. Arizona, Nevada, as I just mentioned, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. That is 93 electoral votes there. The winner of these likely is going to win the presidential race, of course.
And Dave, given what you were laying out earlier, it looks like Trump might need some of these toss-up states more than Biden. What is the polling showing in terms of how those two candidates are doing?
Yeah, let's take a look at those. Let's start first in Arizona. Now, Arizona has 11 electoral votes. Now, this is the Real Clear poll average from 10/22 to 3/11/24. So over about a 5-month period. Trump with an average of just about 48%, with Biden at about 42.5%. That's a 5% lead average over the last 5 months. Now, as you can see here in the 2020 elections, Biden took this by a very slim margin, 49.4 to 49.1. Now, Arizona, like a lot of the country has said, economy, of course, was the most important issue. The border, I was actually surprised, was actually down at number 5. But this is a big one, 11 electoral votes here in Florida.
That is quite the jump, considering that Biden barely scraped by and Trump is leading by that much.
Yeah, this is a very surprising one to me. There are several here that he's leading by like 5%. It's a very surprising. This would be huge, of course, if he took Arizona like he did in 2016, actually.
Dave, what do you think some of the factors are that are driving such an increase here in the 2024 election?
Yeah, you know, the economy seems to be the big one, not just like salaries or anything. It seems to be inflation too. This is hitting a lot of like those rural areas, especially hard. The price of gas, the price of food. Those people who have manual jobs, this is definitely affecting them. And this seems to be the case here for both Arizona and Nevada, I might add, which we'll look at next.
Arizona, obviously a big border state as well. That's probably driving a lot of people to consider their choice. Dave, with that said, what are some of the different paths to 270, and how critical is the swing state of Pennsylvania?
Well, you know, Pennsylvania is the most critical of them all. That's 19 electoral votes, and we'll get to the polls there very soon on that one. But if Biden takes Pennsylvania, then really he only needs 2 others if he gets the right 2. If he takes Georgia and North Carolina is probably unlikely. He can win this with just 3 of the 7 swing states. If you substitute out North Carolina's 16 electoral votes for Michigan's 15 or Arizona's 11, that still gives him just enough to win. Pennsylvania is definitely the key if he's only going to win 3. Otherwise, Trump has got to win at least 4, and Biden, if he doesn't include Pennsylvania, has got to win at least 4 of these 7. Now let's look at the next state. This is Nevada here. Now Nevada had 6 electoral votes. As you can see, this is another big lead here for Trump, 46% to around 40%. As you can see here in 2020, this was another Biden win. Very small, obviously, 50 to 47, but it seems to be some of the same voter issues, a lot of it regarding the economy, more with inflation on that too. Now let's go to the next state. This is Wisconsin. Wisconsin is 10 electoral votes here. Excuse me. This is a very close one, obviously, 46 to 45. And again, this is over a 4-month period there. Now, as you can see, Biden won this by a very slim margin in 2020. This is 10 electoral votes right here. Now, Biden really has made this one a priority. You know, this was one of his first stops on his post-State of the Union address, barnstorming tour. Meanwhile, the GOP, you know, they have their nominating convention in Milwaukee in July. So this, you could say, is a real battleground state. Both camps definitely want this state for sure.
In the Rust Belt as well.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Now let's look at Michigan next. Michigan has 15 electoral votes. Again, this is a 3.5% lead, 46.5 to 43. As you can see, Biden's lead was just 2.5% 4 years ago over Trump. Now, of course, there's plenty of Muslim Americans in Michigan, as well as Arizona and Pennsylvania, with the Israel-Hamas war not looking too good for Biden with those polls right now. That could be part of the reason for these numbers going on.
Right, with that massive uncommitted vote that we've been seeing so far.
Yeah, so, you know, if that war, say that war ends all of a sudden, would these, like Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, would they flip a little bit more towards Biden if that should happen soon? that would be a very interesting development here.
I think an interesting point, too, when it comes to Michigan, Trump won Michigan in 2016, Dave, just by, what was it, 10,000 votes?
Yeah, it was very, very small.
And now we're seeing, to Tiff's point, with the uncommitted vote in the primary for Biden, over 100,000 people. So that could come into play this election year.
That's a great point. Now let's go to Pennsylvania. As we mentioned earlier, Pennsylvania is the biggest key. 19 electoral votes. This is the biggest of the swing states. This is more than Arizona and Nevada combined. Then we just got 17 there. Now Trump took this one in 2016. It was a huge surprise. You can see right now it's a very close. This is almost a toss-up, 46 to 45.5. And it was very close 4 years ago. Just 1% lead for Trump. Now, a couple of the big issues, of course, are economy, but actually also abortion was a big one here, which might explain why this is such a close call as of right now. Now, of course, this is over a 2-month rolling average here. But yeah, this is a battleground state, just like Wisconsin. I'm sure both of them are planning many trips here soon coming up. Now let's look at North Carolina, 16 electoral votes here. As I said, this was kind of an iffy swing state. Trump, 49%, Biden, 44%. That's a sizable lead of 5.5%. Of the 7 swing states, this is the only one Trump won in 2020. He won by 1%, just over 1% over Biden. So it's crucial for him to continue to carry this state. It looks like right now he's in good shape to do that.
Any ideas of why his lead is higher this time around?
You know, we just had North Carolina on the Super Tuesday 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of conservative evangelical voters and definitely a rural area that he and actually Ted Cruz 8 years ago did very well in. But he looks pretty good in this state. Now let's move on to Georgia. Another 16 electoral votes in Georgia. This is a sizable lead here, 5.5%. Meanwhile, boy, this is such a close one in the 2020 race. Look at that, 49.3 to 49.5. Now, of course, black voters make up roughly a third of the voters here in Georgia. And actually, there was an exit poll from 2020. Trump just got 11% of the black vote. But polls have shown recently that's up to 17%. That is a huge difference, I think. That could be why this is the way it is right now with the economy. Again, they're number one.
Also in Georgia, Dave, you have the focal point of the Trump lawsuits there with Fulton County playing out, among other things.
Yeah, exactly. You know, actually there was videos of him driving down the streets, you know, in all those black SUVs with a lot of people cheering him on, actually. It was somewhat surprising to see that. So whatever the case is, he's got a sizable lead there in Georgia right now.
Dave, and we got one more, I think, here for you, Dave. Or this is it.
This is it. That's number 7.
Well, you got your work cut out for you. Dave Martin at the Big Wall. Thank you so much, Dave.
And
we'll be right back with more of The Nation Decides 2024 in just a few short moments.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
They're just kids, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused kids often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is rescuing and protecting kids during this COVID-19 crisis. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no child is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a homeless child. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show our kids they're loved. Homeless kids are afraid and alone, with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this soft, comforting blanket to show you're helping our kids. Please don't wait. In our national crisis, your gift is the lifeline a child needs. Please call or go online to safeplacetosleep.org now. Thank you for saving precious lives.
These are all farmers. Maybe
no,
not
there's
this
not
one.
a farm anymore.
But here is a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insects.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
And welcome back to The Nation Decides on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier.
And right now we do have a projection for you. We're projecting that former President Trump has won the Illinois GOP primary and President Biden has won the Illinois Democratic primary as well. We'll be checking back in as the numbers continue to come in the different races throughout the country. Right now, back to our remote guest, we have Anders Core, publisher of Journal of Political Risk, principal of Core Analytics, and international political risk analyst. The Chinese Communist Party, Anders, is getting more and more aggressive. It's great to have you, by the way, in its intimidation tactics against other governments like Australia, the Philippines, and Taiwan. We didn't see this level of aggression under the former president, President Trump. Why do you think we're seeing this now, and how much of this can be attributed to the current administration's foreign policy?
I mean, the Biden administration and the Trump administration have been evolving from the prior Obama administration, really. You can see a trajectory in terms of getting tougher on China, being tougher in terms of Huawei, for example, Tik Tok. The U.S. government and is going along with the American people, basically, and getting tougher over time on China. And it's for exactly the reasons you've mentioned, which is that China is amping up its aggression everywhere from Taiwan, Philippines. Just today we hear that Iran and China maybe are, hacking into water systems in the United States. So, things are really coming to a head.
Anders, I want to play this clip of Trump that's caused a bit of a stir in the media. Let's play that, and then we'll get your reactions to that.
If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it.
Now, Anders, some media outlets spun that clip highlighting the bloodbath part, but I want to talk about the policy he mentioned there. Now, Trump had taken heavy action against China with tariffs and brought President Xi to the negotiating table, getting a phase one trade deal out of it. Now, if Biden were to win this November, do you see him and his administration at any point in the next 4 years taking a position as aggressive as the one that Trump mentioned at his rally over the weekend?
I would say it's hard to say, and I know that's not what some people want to hear, but I think it's hard to say. There are certain things where Biden has surprised us in terms of being tough on China. He promised to defend Taiwan, for example, if China invaded. That's something that didn't happen prior to Biden. So it's hard to know. I do see the U.S. government evolving even under Biden on the China issue, and but granted, Trump was the one who broke the mold on the tariffs. He's much more, positive towards tariffs, which I think is a good thing personally. And I think he's got exactly the right approach to Chinese companies relocating in Mexico in order to evade U.S. tariffs. I think that's exactly right.
Now, on the part of the Biden administration evolving, since Trump has left office, China has failed to meet its 2-year commitments. Now, President Biden hasn't taken action to hold China accountable for this either. Why do you think that is, and could we see that changing?
Inflation is a paramount concern, I think, for the Biden administration in terms of holding back on further tariffs. Personally, I don't think the tariffs really added much to inflation. A Goldman Sachs and PIIE study found that the China tariffs only increased prices in the United States by about 25 cents on a $100 bill. So that really isn't much. I don't see it as a big thing. I think that tariffs, what they do is they increase the chances, as long as we're gradually increasing tariffs so that our supply chains have a chance to evolve accordingly. And we're friend-shoring and we're moving things away from China. I don't think it's going to affect prices too much. And if you trace many of the world's problems today, all stem back to Beijing and the power that we've given them through hundreds of billions of dollars of trade every year. They're using that power to support Russia, Iran, North Korea. Just recently in Niger, Africa, when people don't think about Africa very very often, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of terrorists in that country, and Niger is now trying to give sell uranium to Iran, and Iran is trying to build nuclear missiles, and those missiles will be pointed at us. So, we can't really be isolationist today anymore in our foreign policy. We're going to have to address these issues, and a lot of those issues go straight back to Beijing.
So, Anders, many liken China's human rights abuses to their Achilles heel as they seek legitimacy on the world stage. Like the previous administration, President Biden's State Department has publicly advocated for the right to freedom of belief in China. For example, they've called on the Chinese regime, to end the persecution of Falun Dafa, a meditation practice that follows the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. They've sanctioned a Chinese official for his role in that persecution. This kind of action was also taken under the previous administration. But what can we expect in terms of advancing religious freedom in China from each candidate if they become president?
Well, I have to hand it to the Trump administration in terms, especially, Secretary Pompeo really took a lead in terms of recognizing the genocide against the Uyghurs, for example. I would hope that if we have another administration that comes in, they pay more attention to what I believe is a genocide against Falun Gong in China. They're trying to eradicate a religion, which is the definition of genocide, one of the types of genocide recognized by the United Nations. So we really need to step up on that term. I think Falun Gong is really a powerful movement in China. They're a movement for good in China, I believe, and I think that we all need to come out as Americans and support that group just as much as we support Uyghurs.
Now, Anders, in terms of global influence, China's been strengthening that through its Belt and Road Initiative. Now, some world leaders and national security experts see it as a debt trap diplomacy scheme that gives the Chinese Communist Party power to pressure indebted nations into furthering its global ambitions. Now, the Trump administration started the Blue Dot Network to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. Biden has continued the program and also launched the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor last year. How has each administration fared on countering the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative?
During the Cold War, the United States and the former Soviet Union tried to compete with each other by offering more money than the other to developing countries. I don't think that strategy really worked very well. The United States doesn't really have the money to just splash out globally in terms of building roads and bridges and funding everyone. I think we need to look at a stronger sort of not only incentives to do the right thing, but disincentives in terms of denying access to countries that are friendly to China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, what has been called the axis of evil. These countries really shouldn't have access to our markets, and we should tariff them. And I think that the Trump administration is actually more likely to do something like that than the Biden administration has been. But so I just don't trust very much in this idea that we're going to be able to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative with our own. We already have the International Monetary Fund and World Bank that does provide credit to countries when they need it. What we should be making sure of is that the American money that's going into those institutions is not used to bail out countries like Pakistan after they've taken so many loans from China that they can't pay them back, and we end up funding China through these institutions.
Underscore, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And we've got a lot more coming up tonight on The Nation Decides. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.
What do you do when your tire goes flat and there's no air anywhere? You reach for Bullseye Pro, the smarter, faster, hands-free way to fill it up with air. Bullseye Pro is equipped with a rechargeable lithium-ion power plant. So fast and so convenient. It's like the power of an air compressor in the palm of your hand. Look, you can inflate all 4 tires on a single charge. It has a built-in smart pressure digital sensor that gauges and automatically stops when the set tire pressure is reached. Easily inflate pool toys, exercise balls, and more. Call or go online now and get the complete Bullseye Pro inflation system for the factory direct price of just $79.99. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free, and we'll give you a 50% discount on a second one. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-984-7221. That's 1-800-984-7221, or go to getbullseyepro.com.
You have one new message.
Dr. Bonatti, this is Norm Evans. I played for the Dolphins and the Seahawks. But anyway, I was just calling to say thank you to you again because I'm feeling great. No more back or neck problems after all these years, and I'm doing well thanks to you. I just wanted to say thank you and let you know I was thinking about you, and I always do. Okay, God bless you, friend. Keep up the good work.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Days Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Days Enzyme Fermented Coffee.
The 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place in New York City in September 2024. We are proud to announce that this year's panel of judges will include distinguished vocalists from the globally acclaimed Shen Yun Performing Arts. The prestigious Gold Award includes a $10,000 prize. For additional details, please visit vocal.ntdtv.com.
Got a new house.
A place that I call home.
And welcome back to our special live coverage on The Nation Decides 2024. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier. And let's check in now with NTD's Iris Tao, who's at the White House. Iris, what can you tell us?
Good evening to all of you. So right now, President Trump is celebrating his wins in Florida and Ohio on Truth Social. And President Biden, meanwhile, is campaigning right now in Phoenix, Arizona after 2 stops in Nevada today. And while in Nevada, President Biden took aim at former President Trump over infrastructure investments. Watch.
Must remember, my predecessor kept talking about infrastructure weak for 4 years. We didn't build a damn thing. You all think I'm kidding, I'm not. I propose and sign the most significant investment in our nation's infrastructure in generations.
And as we mentioned, the most closely watched race tonight will be a Senate race in Ohio, a deep red state that Trump carried in the past 2 presidential elections, but where a Democrat senator is still sitting there. So 3 Republicans are right now competing fiercely to try to face and potentially unseat that Democratic senator. Among them, we have Bernie Moreno, who has Trump's endorsement and also is a high-end car dealer, and also Dolan, who is actually quite different. He's seen as a more centrist figure and trying to appeal to more moderate voters, and he also has attacked Trump before over January 6th. And according to the latest data we're seeing from AP, with about 22% of the votes counted, right now is a very tight race. So basically now Moreno is standing at 40.7% of support, while Dolan has 37%. So while Moreno has a slight lead, that is still pretty not significant compared to, of course, we have still 80% more votes to coming in later. Well, but regardless of how this is going to turn out, early polling data from CNN exit polls is showing that actually most of the voters in that GOP race in Ohio are saying that they would support the presumptive GOP nominee in November. And actually 8 in 10 of them say that they're pretty approving of Trump's performance in his last term at the White House. But still, this key Senate race in Ohio will serve as an important test for Trump's endorsement power, which is actually the first test for Trump's power this year in a highly contested race. Back to you all.
Iris, thank you for that.
And back with us here at the desk in studio is Gerard Felitti, political strategist and senior counsel of the Lawfare Project, and Dante Mills, political strategist and national trial attorney of Mills Edwards. So guys, we're seeing big changes coming to the RNC now that Michael Whatley's become chair and Lara Trump co-chair. They're saying that they'll be working hand in glove with the Trump campaign. Here's a clip of what they said shortly after the election.
In order for Republicans to win, we must focus on 2 primary missions: getting out the vote and protecting the ballot. Over the next 8 months, the RNC will work hand in glove with President Trump's campaign to deliver on these core missions.
We are going to make sure that every single penny of every dollar raised goes towards one goal, which is winning. How do we do that? We have to have election integrity like we've never seen before in this country. Right? We've got to play the game a little bit differently. We have to encourage people to do things like early voting.
So Gerard, is the turnover we're seeing here in the RNC, is this healthy? Is this the normal way things play out, and are you optimistic?
To a large extent, it's normal. It's the presumptive nominee has an authority over the party and wants to shape the party structure in his preference because he wants to work with people he thinks will be the best ones to get him across the threshold. And in this case, it's really interesting that he is focusing, or the party, the RNC now is focusing on the get out the vote efforts, the mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots, things that Trump has not traditionally been keen on. Republicans tend to favor voting in person on Election Day, and that may have cost a lot of votes over the years. And now we're seeing that switch back to what the Democrats are doing, which is to put an emphasis on early voting and mail-in ballots. And we see this in the structure of who is in power now at the RNC.
We do have a projection before we get back to our discussion here. And Bernie Moreno winning the Senate primary there in Ohio. As Iris said from the White House earlier, this is a big test for former President Trump with one of his endorsements. I'm sure we'll be hearing him later throughout the night, if we haven't already, from Truth Social, claiming victory here. What do you guys make of this?
Absolutely. I think this is a win and a victory for former President Trump. If you see, Moreno is a businessman, and he was up against two political figures there in Ohio, and the businessman won out. Obviously, he was backed by Trump. They want to push that anti-establishment motto, and I think this is a key sign to that. And I think Trump is going to continue to do that. We know that if Trump gets into the White House, he's going to want some authority, and that comes with having the Senate, with having the House. And that seat in Ohio is one of the most highly contested seats that's available now. Brown is supposedly, on the ropes, and the Republicans have an opportunity to take over that seat. And Trump's nominee is going to be riding with him going into that election day in November.
And Gerard, going back to the RNC, there have been layoffs, but also new hires, including that of Trump attorney Christina Bobb as their senior counselor for election integrity. Now, the RNC's posture is now supposed to be more offensive rather than defensive. What could this look like on the ground, especially as we head to November, but also in those battleground states?
Well, in the battleground states especially, you can expect that Trump will have election lawyers in place before Election Day to make sure that the integrity of the election is solid, that votes are properly counted, that votes are properly tabulated, that the right people have access to them, and that whatever action needs to be taken to rectify any foreseen deficiencies are immediately dealt with through the legal system. This is something that some candidates are unprepared for, but this seems, putting Bob in that position, seems to be an indication that Trump is ready for an election battle in states where vote would be contested.
And Dante, how do you read that?
I have to push back on that a little bit because I don't think there's a history of votes being casted that aren't supposed to be. I don't think there's a true history in our country of an election, their results being false or false ballots being cast. And there was a lot in that with the 2020 election where they did a lot of research and they did not come up with a significant amount of false ballots or anything like that. So I want to be careful with that narrative. I want our people to believe that if they go to the polls to vote, their vote matters and that the outcome of that is pure. I think that's what we need for democracy. Whoever wins, I want everybody involved to say, we voted and this was the outcome, and we're going to stick with that because we're going to need the country to come together after that election and believe that whoever is the next president, whether it's former President Trump or President Biden, got in the right way.
This has been a great discussion, but there's still so much more to cover as the results continue to come in. We've got Dave Martin at the Data Hub when we return. Stick around.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
Then I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
So please, call or go to helpheart.org now to help save lives.
Welcome back to The Nation, the Science NTD special live coverage of the election. We're going now to the Data Hub with Dave Martin. Now, Dave, there's been a lot of talks about Trump and Biden, but there's also RFK Jr. or the third party independent vote. Now, there's been some talks about his VP choices. Why does he have to announce earlier than the others? What's the latest here?
Yeah, you know, in order to get on the ballot as an independent in some of these states, you've already got to list your vice president. He's reportedly going to pick it sometime later this month, actually. As you can see here, we got the three-team race with Trump, Biden, and Kennedy. Now, Kennedy has announced a couple people on his short list. Now, this one really made headlines. Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Now, this was last week. This came out that he was on the short list. A very shocking person, actually, because, you know, he's a football player. He's not really in politics. But in recent days, I've heard that he is out as a VP candidate, which is not surprising because he's under contract to the Jets next season. But the other one is a lot more prominent. This is Jesse Ventura. Now, he was a WWF star back in the 1970s and 80s, known as The Body. But then in 1998, as an independent, he shocked everyone when he won the Minnesota race for governor. He served 4 years there. He's still been in politics ever since, but he seems like a much more likely shot to be Kennedy's vice president.
Well, look at you blending sports and politics together. But earlier you showed the picture of Trump, Biden, and RFK Jr. How is he doing in terms of polls against those two?
Yeah, you know, this is a poll here for last October. Who would you vote for? Biden, 37% of the time. This is October 17 to 20. Trump, 36%. Biden, just 13. Now, the 13 actually is very good for an independent, I must say. The interesting thing to me here is that he actually gets a little bit more of the Republican vote versus the Democrat vote, despite being a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, until last year when he decided to drop out and become a Republican. Now, this has been updated recently. Trump's numbers have gone up 4%. Kennedy's have actually gone down 4%. Somewhat surprising that he's now just under 10%. Of course, with Trump and Biden kind of taking the lead with all these primaries, they're certainly in the news a whole lot more here. But you can also see Trump has actually gotten a little bit more of the black vote here, up to 17%. And the Hispanic vote, is very surprising to see him with that lead here as well. So it'll be very interesting to see if these numbers indeed hold up.
It looks like he is still taking more from the Republicans in this chart.
Yeah, this continues to make me 6% here for Kennedy here of the Republicans, 3% for the Democrats. Now, as we mentioned earlier in Georgia, actually, we were talking about the Georgia race. Trump had just 11% of the voters, the black voters in the 2020 poll, up to 17% recently, and that's reflected right here in that 17%. That'll also be very interesting to see if that continues to hold up. This is nationwide. That was, of course, just in Georgia, but this is a nationwide poll here. So it'll be interesting to see how long these numbers actually hold up here.
Given that, too, we're also seeing the Latino or Hispanic vote was really important for President Biden in 2020. It seems he's losing some of that to Trump. We're seeing the Biden campaign trying to get back some of that vote with this new Biden-Harris with the Latinos. How do you see that fitting in as these numbers are coming out?
You know, this is a shocker to me. I saw Biden with the exit polls had almost 2/3 of the Hispanic Latino vote 4 years ago. As you can see, now he's actually trailing Trump here, 33 to 35%. It's kind of showed how the Republican Party has kind of flipped some of their voters. A lot of them are actually now more manual labor kind of people who are getting more of their support. I think they're feeling the effects of the economy, or really the inflation, hurting them the most. A lot of them, especially those being hit in those rural areas, a little bit more disproportionately. The rising costs of food and gas, you're seeing that here with these Hispanic and Latino voters for sure.
Quite fascinating indeed. Dave Martin with the Data Hub, thanks for that. And Steve, back to you at the desk.
And now, let's check in with our own NTD's Iris Tao, who's standing by with us at the North Lawn of the White House. Iris, great to see you again. What can you tell us from the White House?
Sure. So right now, reactions are pouring in to the results of the key Senate race in Ohio, which is, of course, Moreno. Trump's endorsement actually has been projected to win. So right now, Trump's campaign has congratulated Moreno on Twitter or X and saying congratulations to him. And also, the National Republican Senatorial Committee chair is also endorsing Moreno, saying he's committed to support President Trump's agenda and stand up for Ohio in the Senate. But also we're hearing some reactions from the Democrat side. His main opponent in the Democratic side, of course, Senator Sherrod Brown, is saying after Moreno's win in Ohio that, quote, the choice ahead of Ohio is clear. Bernie Moreno has spent his career and campaign in putting himself first and would do the same if elected. Meanwhile, Democratic Party of Ohio reacting, also saying Bernie Moreno has made clear throughout his career and his campaign that he only looks out for himself, not the people of Ohio. So right now we're seeing a highly contested race being set up in November in this deep red state, which former President Trump has carried for the past two presidential elections. Republicans are really trying to flip the seat red in November, which of course we know that Democrats already have a razor thin majority in the Senate. If Republicans can actually claim this back, that would mean a very significant difference. Meanwhile, we're also seeing, of course, a Biden-Trump rematch increasingly clear as we get more and more close to November. President Biden is right now campaigning in Arizona, Phoenix, saying, quote, to Latino voters that, quote, I need you, Kamala, and I desperately need your help because, look, there's only about 6 or 7 states that will determine the outcome of this election. They're toss-up states, and this is one of them. And President Biden has been on a campaign blitz to different battleground states and telling voters that they're facing a very important choice in November, often touting his own theme of democracy versus what Trump will propose to this country. Meanwhile, former President Trump is, of course, also celebrating his win in today's primaries on his own Truth Social account, but also looking ahead to next week. President Biden will be in North Carolina, again hitting the campaign trail and also campaigning in New York City with two former presidents, Barack Obama and Clinton, and that to further his Democratic agenda come this November. Back to you.
And to these, as always, great reporting from the White House. And now back to our in-studio panel, where we have Arlene Richards, NTD legal correspondent, and Chris Beers, NTD's political correspondent. Arlene, great to have you here. Trump's legal cases, they've sort of become part of his campaign to a certain degree. With so many of them filed, it can be hard keeping up with all of the updates ranging. The latest in his civil fraud case, where a massive judgment was handed down to him. In order to appeal it, he appears to be having a difficult time coming up with the $464 million bond.
Yeah, Trump can't find an insurance company to cover the judgment, which is over $500 million if you include the interest. Now, his attorneys say they asked 30 insurance companies, and one broker said it's a practical impossibility. Now, Trump would need nearly $1 billion in cash and securities to get the bond. Now, his lawyers have asked the appeals court to delay posting the bond until after the appeals process is over, but Letitia James, the Attorney General, could still try to seize his assets and secure the cash.
Yeah, Trump may have another option here too. Former federal prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky said that Trump could plead the eighth, that being the 8th Amendment of the Constitution about cruel and unusual punishment. It says you can't charge excessive fines, and Trump supporters are definitely saying that this fine is excessive, so that's one path that Trump could use here. To give you a sense of the scale here, Trump's insurance broker, Gary Giletti, the president of one of the world's largest privately held insurance brokerages, says that these bonds of this scale are very, very few and far between, and they only hit companies that are publicly traded on an international scale, not private individuals or private businesses. So Trump is obviously furious about this. He's been posting about it on Truth Social all day, calling it election interference, a witch hunt, over and over again actually today. And it makes sense. I mean, they're going after his wallet, and in no small way.
Moving on from Trump's New York civil fraud trial, Arlene, what's the latest in Trump's Georgia case?
Well, Nathan Wade resigned after Judge McAfee ruled on the disqualification motion. He said either Wade or Fani Willis had to resign to cure an appearance of impropriety. So Willis wasn't disqualified, but Trump's attorneys are appealing the decision. Now, this case is particularly problematic for Trump because it's the only case that he can't pardon himself from if he becomes the president. But on the other hand, this case could still go away because of Willis's ethics violations, which have put a stain on her as well as the case.
And to your point about a stain on this case, Arlene, I mean, this is political rocket fuel for the former president. He's been saying all along these cases are a witch hunt, it's election interference, it's run by corrupt people. And here you have the judge in this case saying that there's an odor of mendacity, which is basically a fancy word for lies, surrounding this case due to Fani Willis's and Nathan Wade's actions. Moving forward, you can definitely expect Donald Trump to harp on this again and again, coming back to it, saying, hey, look, I said they were corrupt and they're corrupt. That's what he could be saying. So in terms of narrative with this Georgia case, he's definitely winning, at least for now. He's also winning in the Republican National Committee. His daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, was recently stepped in as the co-chair there. They're gutting the organization, realigning it around MAGA values. So now he has this RNC powerhouse behind him, and potentially all the funds that come with it to help him fight the legal battles that he has.
Really fascinating discussion. Thank you both, covering a lot of ground there. And there's still so much more tonight. We'll be back very shortly on The Nation Decides.
Freedom is not free, and neither is the truth. In order to bring you the facts, our reporters are out there on the front lines getting the true story. Some of them served 10 years of prison in China. We've been censored on social media. Our Hong Kong printing offices were set on fire, and we've been repeatedly attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. But no matter what, we believe that you deserve the truth, and so we continue to bring the truth to light. Head on over to getepic.com and try honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days. In 4th grade, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. I had 70 and 60-degree curvatures. Went to Shriners Hospital in LA. It's been fused ever since. I noticed a lot of pain going down my left buttock into my thighs and into my calf. I could be standing there and my legs would just go out. I went through pain management for 2.5 years, and the pain management specialist told me there was nothing more he could do for me. We actually did our own research, and next thing I know, Dr. Benatti called, and he told me immediately over the phone what my issue was without even seeing me. I was in a twilight stage during surgery, and you can actually say, where are you feeling that pain? And it immediately stops.
Hold the leg up there. No pain here. No pain here. No pain on the butt.
No. All of a sudden, they're all, do you want to get up and walk? Well, I couldn't walk before, and I got up and I just started crying because I had no pain. And I had all my weight on my left leg and on my right leg, and I walked a straight line with no assistance, no falling, no grabbing onto the walls, nothing. I held my own weight. And that's the first time in months that I was able to walk by myself.
Benatti succeeds where others fail. For more stories like these and the rest of our program, check out American Medicine Today, featuring cutting-edge medical and science innovators and a medical professional's insight on political and social issues plaguing our nation and healthcare. American Medicine Today, Saturdays 6 and Sundays at 9 on NTD television and other streaming platforms.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
And we're back with our special coverage on The Nation Decides 2024. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier.
And joining us now is our panel, Brigadier General Robert Spalding, former Senior Director for the White House Strategic Planning at National Security Council and retired United States Air Force Brigadier General. General, glad to have you on with us tonight.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Of course, General, one of Trump's national security pillars was peace through strength, if you will. Often on the campaign trail, he would say simply threatening world leaders to prevent war or invasions. Take Russia, for example. Trump saying he staved off the Russian invasion of Ukraine while he was in office, telling Putin there would be hell to pay. Meanwhile, Biden threatened Putin with sanctions that obviously did not work, as we can see now. Is this just about strength or something else, like different international objectives?
Well, during the Cold War, I think we had much more respect for the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons. And I think one of my concerns is that we're not paying proper respect to the fact that Putin is messaging quite loudly, in fact, that there are red lines that we can cross, particularly with the war in Ukraine, that would invoke the use of nuclear weapons, at least on his side. And I think that's something we took very, very seriously during the Cold War that I think is missing in the foreign policy of today. And it's a dangerous path to walk down.
And can you elaborate on that for us? What could we see as the fallout here?
Well, you could see the first use of a nuclear weapon since Hiroshima or Nagasaki, which, during the Cold War, we were absolutely terrified of happening. And now it seems like we think, there's no possibility that somebody would actually do it. If you remember, there was also a widespread belief that there's no possibility that Putin would invade. And I'm not saying that we need to bow down to Putin's nuclear blackmail, but we do need to take this situation seriously. And to your point about Trump, I think one of the things that when you take our nuclear capability, this willingness to message to our adversaries prior to war that they could potentially use a wrath of that capability from the United States if there were to go to war, that's something that kept the Soviet Union at bay, and I think it's something that we need to think about, particularly with regard to Russia, but more importantly with regard to China.
And now, General, the White House is saying that Iran and Russia are making progress in a deal that could cause that body count in the war to surge in Ukraine. Here's John Kirby giving the background and reading a joint statement from G7 nations. We'll play that sound.
As y'all know, we have expressed serious concerns from this podium that Russia is seeking to acquire close-range ballistic missiles from Iran to enable its brutal war in Ukraine. And that Russian negotiations to acquire those close-range ballistic missiles have been active and they've been advancing. Were Iran to proceed with providing ballistic missiles or related technology to Russia, we are prepared to respond swiftly and in a coordinated manner, including with new and significant measures against Iran.
General, what's your reaction to that?
Well, we saw this during the Obama administration with regard to the islands in the South China Sea. We basically told Xi Jinping, you better not build military bases in the South China Sea or else. And then he proceeded to build the bases in the South China Sea, and we did nothing. And I think that's the challenge that we face here in Washington, D.C. What are we prepared to do? And then if we're not prepared to do anything that might preclude the action that you want to forestall, then you should not message at all, because afterwards you end up looking like you are, feckless.
And what do you see as a better approach then, or whoever becomes next president, what should they do?
First of all, they need to take a comprehensive view of the world. These actors are all working in concert. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, they're working together. They're working together on behalf of their own interests and against the interests of the United States. And what the United States did during the Cold War so well was to bring the allies in line to work together as a cohesive unit, not just in security measures, but in economic measures, and finance measures, and trade measures, and political measures across the spectrum. Geopolitically, we worked together with our allies to ensure that freedom prevailed and tyranny was, losing. That's the things that we need to get back to. We really need to work together with our allies to promote our own interests against the interests of these authoritarian regimes that are, quite frankly, working together. It's not just about, though, the wars that are happening, the proxy wars, whether it be Hamas's invasion of Israel or whether it be, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. These are interrelated, and I think what we need to think about is what are the things that are happening in our own societies, and how do we prevent that? The Tik Tok bill, for example, is one good example of things that we need to begin to think more comprehensively about because they affect our society at large.
General Spalding, it appears as though President Biden's strategy on the war is to support Ukraine until they win. Trump says that he'll play peacemaker and end the war by bringing Zelensky and Putin into a room to sit down at the negotiating table. Could Biden do this now if he wanted to? And how do you ultimately see this playing out?
Well, the United States has been here over 240 years. And so we've got to see a lot of different, approaches to national security. When Russia was at the border of Ukraine getting ready to invade, I said, what will happen is they will invade and then we will have a stalemate just like we had in Korea, which is exactly what we have. What we did in Korea after several years of combat, tens of thousands of deaths, we basically agreed upon an armistice. That's what should have been in the game plan for Ukraine in terms of what the United States approach was from the very beginning. And I think we haven't put enough pressure on both sides, and not just on Ukraine and Russia, but also on the Chinese to force a resolution to this. It's not going to be a peace deal, but it could be a ceasefire that stops people from dying, on both sides.
In general, on that note, we did see Putin just secure another term as president in Russia. We're also seeing that Russia is furthering its ties to China, the more that the West isolates it. Now, in turn, this is strengthening China's clout as it fights for global supremacy. What does Biden need to do now, or whoever is next president? What do they need to do to turn that around?
Well, first of all, I think we need to take a step back and understand what are the limits of our power? What can we reasonably achieve? What can we affordably achieve? What, are the American people willing to sacrifice for? We need to understand that first. Then the most important thing we need to be working towards is how do we prevent a nuclear war? And then finally, how do we promote freedom over tyranny in the long run?
General, we'll let you get a drink of water. We really appreciate your insights tonight joining us. General Spalding, thank you so much. And now turning to our in-studio panel is Arlene Richards, NTD's legal correspondent, and Chris Beers, NTD political correspondent. Great to have you both back. Arlene, the Biden administration using Tik Tok, the application there, a controversial application, to reach younger voters. The app has become a political tool for some politicians, but the Senate is now next in line to take up voting on a bill that would ultimately ban it if it isn't sold by ByteDance, a Chinese company, which is under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. It sounds like the bill, however, may be losing some traction in the Senate.
Well, the CEO of TikTok met with members of the Senate to try to convince them not to sign the bill. And actually, he said he's not going to sell it. So he's asking users to call the senators as well about the bill. Now, TikTok can't really do anything to stop the Senate from actually signing the bill or voting on the bill. But if Biden signs it into law, then he may want to sue the Biden administration, and he will probably argue that the ban is a violation of the First Amendment. Now, as for the Chinese Communist Party, which actually controls the app, a ban would block their ability to access data from users, and it would also interfere with their efforts to promote their communist propaganda across the U.S.
There's also an interesting plot twist along with this bill. Former President Trump hasn't been openly supporting it. He's saying that Facebook is actually worse than TikTok, and that if we ban TikTok, the users from that app will go over to Facebook, which he's calling an enemy of the people. There's also speculation that billionaire Jeff Yass, who owns about $33 billion of TikTok, is pressuring Trump to make these kind of statements. It's reported that he went down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Trump, and then after that, Trump made these statements, but Trump is, of course, contesting some of this. Another interesting thing about this is that Trump's former Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, is rallying investors to potentially buy TikTok if ByteDance does, in fact, divest from the app. He says it should be controlled by American businesses, not Chinese businesses, not the Chinese. And just to step back and give you a sense of the impact of what's at stake here, TikTok is saying there's 170 million users in the US on TikTok. That's half of the US population. And some of these people, there's a lot of money on the line from them. There's one woman who makes enough as an influencer on TikTok to pay for her mother's mortgage and the college bills of her two siblings.
And Arlene, given all that we are seeing here, what's next in terms of this TikTok bill? How likely is it to pass?
Well, the next step is for the Senate to vote on the bill, but Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that they will review the bill, but it seems like he's going to slow walk it to the floor for the vote. Now, President Trump has opposed the bill, but the House actually went ahead and signed off on it and favored it. But I think the Senate is going to follow in Trump's lead.
There's additional pressure on the Republicans, too, in regards to this, to vote against the bill. You have venture capitalist Keith Rabois saying that he's not going to fund any Republicans or PACs run by Republicans who vote against this bill. There's Jeff Yass, who I mentioned earlier. The New York Post says that he called a bunch of Congress people right after this bill was introduced, pressuring them to try to get them not to vote for it. Of course, Yass's spokespeople are denying this. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Congress surrounding this, especially the GOP, who's been calling for a ban on TikTok for years. You also have former President Trump, when he was president, making a concerted effort to get rid of this app. So if they flip-flop on it now, they could be sending mixed messages to voters. So we'll have to see. The question is, does the GOP, when this bill gets to the Senate, does the GOP stick to their guns, or do they cave to big money?
Well, Arlene Richards, Chris Spears, thank you both so much for joining us. And we'll be right back with more of our special coverage, more to discuss here on NTD News. That's coming up.
A performance that truly matters. For each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shen Yun, coming to Lincoln Center, April 3rd through the 14th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
I was born into the wrong body. I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my health.
We're pushed into silence.
We've been spending a lot more time than ever at home these days. So maybe now you've just noticed cold air coming in from a couple windows, or that your patio door isn't closing fully, which means you're losing heat in the winter, losing cooling in the summer, losing money all year long. And that means now is the time for new windows and patio doors from Renewal by Andersen. Most installations are usually done in just one day. Renewal by Andersen windows and doors can help lower your heating bills and air conditioning bills with their most energy efficient glass available. Only their windows are made with Fibrex material, proven to be 2 times stronger than vinyl, and they're backed by a 20-year warranty. And right now, when you buy one window or patio door, get one at 40% off. Plus, there's no money down, no payments for 12 months, and no interest for 12 months. Plus, an additional $200 off your entire purchase.
1-800-968-1443. One single person is sometimes all it takes to change the course of history. With courage and great effort, our ancestors built the pillars we stand on today, leaving us a legacy of art, music, and wisdom. At the heart of almost every culture is our relation and connection with the divine. Today, their profound contemplations, beliefs, and great sacrifices have at times become misunderstood and even ridiculed. With the help of academic experts, we'll shine a new light on some of the most influential and courageous characters in history and the miracles that surround them.
How prepared is your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking, let's go. You'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Yes. Make a plan today.
I am blind, but I need not see. I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
And we're back with more of our special coverage. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier.
And now let's bring in our in-studio panel, Gerard Felitti, political strategist, senior counsel of Lawfare Project, and Dante Mills, political strategist and national trial attorney of Mills Edwards. Well, guys, I think we kind of assumed what we saw tonight play out in terms of the presidential, but there was one race that everybody was kind of paying attention to. That was the race for Senate in Ohio, specifically the primary there. Gerard, I want to get your thoughts. We saw Bernie Moreno take that. We could pull up the results here and take a look at the margin. You know, this was a Trump-endorsed candidate. He was up against the establishment, some might say, with the governor of Ohio endorsing Dolan and not Moreno. What do you think this says about the night for Trump?
I think this says that Trump had a good night, that the candidates that he is endorsing are winning the primaries. I also think that this was an interesting race because we did have Democratic money coming into the race to back Moreno. We did have dirty allegations, dirty tricks coming into this particular race. And that's kind of foreshadowing what I think we'll see in the general election cycle. We will see the Democrats trying to go after the low-hanging fruit and in place easier candidates that they think they will beat more MAGA Republicans, if you will, in primary races that are to come. And we will see them continuing to be involved in that aspect of dirty politics as usual. All sides do this. It's not unexpected. But what we really see here is a vindication of Trump being able to choose a candidate in the primary. So this confirms that he is the head of the party, although whether his candidates will win in the general election remains to be seen.
Dante, a relatively mild night for the president tonight, nothing standing out. Anything stick out to you this evening?
Yes, and you talk about Donald Trump truly reemerging as the head of the party. There was some dispute or debate as to whether or not he can get that crown back after losing the presidency, and there were challengers. But I think as we move forward, it's clear Trump is the nominee, right? He has people that he's backing that's getting, that's winning the right to go up in these Senate seats and other seats around the nation. But what we have to focus on is how he unites the people that he went against in the primaries. And we're talking about Ron DeSantis, who presumably still runs Florida. And Trump is going to need Florida to win this general election. How does he heal that? Because there is some debate, or there's some dispute there. How does he make that work? We know that Mike Pence said he's not going to back Trump. What impact does that have? And can Trump heal that wound? I think that's what it's going to come down to. Every vote is going to be necessary, and this is going to be a close race. So how can he mend these fences from the primary? We know that President Biden had no challengers, so he doesn't have any fences to mend, but Trump does. And how does he do that? And how does he bring everybody together to get behind him if he wants to be successful in November?
Now, speaking of that Ohio Senate race, the Democrat Sherrod Brown, the incumbent there, obviously went uncontested this evening. How do you see him faring in the election in November?
Well, he's won the last couple of cycles. He went uncontested, and he really wasn't tested. I think this is going to be a test because you do have now, in the general, you have President Trump on this ballot. And Ohio may show up for President Trump, and this is his candidate that got the Republican nomination. And you have to assume if Trump wins, he may bring his candidate along with him. So Brown is going to have to really make some noise, and I think he's going to have to bring attention to himself. He's not going to be able to ride President Biden's coattail, where the Republican nominee may. So he's going to have to stand out on his own and make people want to vote for him again.
That's a good point, Gerard. I mean, 6 years ago, that was there wasn't a presidential, so there was no down ballot vote. A lot has changed in 6 years. Ohio seems to be getting more red by the year. What's your take?
No, I agree that there will be a tremendous benefit from having Moreno ride on the coattails of Donald Trump. But that's also not a given that he'll win. We saw this in Georgia as well, which was leading more Republican than not in the previous election cycle. And it was not just Donald Trump that lost, but it was his Senate choice, which were even actually more popular than he was at some point in the state. So there is a slight danger to being on the president's coattails, as it were. Even if Donald Trump is immensely popular in Ohio, that's not a guarantee that his coattails will be long enough to carry Moreno to victory, but it's a very good chance that we will see a like vote. So people who go out to vote for Trump will vote for a MAGA candidate like Moreno.
Given, speaking of former President Trump, he does have a slew of legal cases. Donde, how do you see that fitting in? If Trump is convicted, how is that going to impact voter turnout? Could it help him, or would it just hurt him?
I think it's going to hurt him. I know there's people that's going to back Trump no matter what, but there's no way that I can sit here and realistically say that if a presidential candidate was convicted of a crime, that it's a bonus somehow. I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to hurt him. There are people who are independent, who are leaning on the fence, and they're watching these cases. And if one comes down not in his favor, at least at a minimum, they may stay away. And that hurts him. So I don't think there's a win here if he loses a criminal case, which is why he's trying to push all of these cases back, so that people are saying, well, maybe it's not a legitimate case. They can still have that position, and you won't have a guilty verdict or something confirming that these cases are legitimate, which may scare people away.
Gerard, what do you make of that? There are people saying there's a two-tiered justice system. What do you make of all of this?
Well, there may very well be a two-tier justice system that's not necessarily relevant to what Trump's need to defend each of those cases on the merits, which he still needs to do. And ultimately, that argument is one for jury nullification in the courtroom, but for the voters, it really goes to the hardcore Trump supporters, people who think that there is an inequity, that their candidate was robbed of the election last time, and are more likely to come and vote for him because they see this unfairness perpetuating in the criminal charges that he's facing. However, I don't know that plays that well with independents, and I agree that the voters who are most likely to make a difference, the independent voters, the moderate voters, may well be turned off by a Trump conviction.
Speaking of independents, let's talk about RFK Jr. So there's this piece out in Slate titled, "Trump and Biden should both be terrified of the third-party vote." They continue to note that RFK Jr. is polling better than any third-party candidate in a generation, sitting at about 15% in the Real Clear Politics average of a three-way race as of March 11th. Now, how much of an upset would Kennedy be? Who do you see him taking more votes from? Let's start with you.
Well, I think right now, most of his votes are from Jets fans who thought he was going to pick Aaron Rodgers as his vice president. It was just announced he's not, so he may lose some of those votes. But listen, a third-party candidate in a tight presidential race can be the determining factor. And it's happened in our politics before, recently. So you have to imagine that he's going to have some impact. But how does each candidate, former President Trump and President Biden, convince people not to essentially waste their vote on him? That's going to be their job. Convincing Americans that if you vote for that third party, you're taking away a vote from somebody, and that may allow somebody else to get in. You don't want that to happen, so you should vote for me. I think that's what the argument has to be. Don't waste your vote and allow something that you don't want or your worst candidate to get in because you didn't go with the other side.
Gerard, what do you make of RFK as a potential spoiler? And also, how do you see candidates doing what Dante was saying and making sure they don't lose that vote?
I think we've seen third-party candidates before come in, usually at the 11th hour, and not do as well as Kennedy is doing now. But also, they do tend to fade away as we get close to the election, and traditional voting patterns reemerge. If you're a Republican, you're more likely to vote for your candidate. If you're a Democrat, you're more likely to vote for Joe Biden. If you're an independent, you're wondering whether you're wasting your vote voting for someone who doesn't have a realistic chance of winning. And I think most people do have that calculus, so they see that as an opportunity to not vote for someone they despise or they dislike. And when we have a rematch essentially of the last election, a lot of people are turned off. A lot of people are going to vote for Kennedy just because of that, but I don't think it's enough to make a difference. I think that ultimately the candidates are doing, Trump and Biden are doing what they need to be doing, which is selling their message to their base, getting their base on board, and then reaching out to moderates and independents.
Well, panel, this has been a fascinating discussion. Dante Mills, Gerard Filitti, thank you so much for sitting down with us. That does conclude our coverage for this evening.
We'll be covering more of this election cycle here on The Nation Decides 2024. We hope to see you again.
I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier.
Until next time, and good night.
We've moved so far away from the Constitution that in many ways we don't even recognize it.
In Hillsdale College's most popular online course, Constitution 101, distinguished politics professors teach you the meaning and history of the Constitution, how it's been undermined, and what it will take to restore it. Absolutely free at learnfromhillsdale.org. You'll learn the principles of American government, discover how the founders established